people on the American and the Chinese side that want to solve this problem. There's nutballs. They're still pushing an agenda trying to keep the banker elite, the dictatorship of the planet, who works with the proxies of international billionaires and the Federal Reserve System and the international secret orders. This isn't going to work. In fact, it's like, I use a medical analogy. If you walk into the ICU and you have a patient that's an extremist, and you see residents and glowing and saying, I think I've done everything, the patient will be fine. And you look at their stats and you say their oxygen level's dropping, their bioimpedance level's dropping, which we use in the ICU to see if somebody's going to die. Their patient's not coherent, so they're not answering questions in a coherent manner. Their pupils are almost fixed and dilated. And the patient's basically starting to get vigor livoris, which basically the veins are starting to pool in the base of their body, which means they're about to die. And they're saying, well, if let's like somebody with gas gangrene, and it's in their toe first, and they're still trying to temporize. Well, the bankers still should be in control. And now it's up to the foot, and they're thinking, well, we're not going to take the foot off. We'll see, we think we can solve it. And they're giving intravenous antibiotics, which is not going to work when you get an expanding, rapidly hypoxic tissue with gas gangrene. If you don't do surgery at that point or get them to the hyperbaric chamber, try to stop it, they're going to die. And the same thing, the bankers still want to maintain control, so they fiddle with the system like fiddling with a patient that's dying, and it's not going to work, is it?
Well, it's worse than fiddling. What they've proposed is to expand on the method that hasn't worked. Their view is that the problem that they have is that there's not enough credit or not enough liquidity, that is, to paper over the financial paper that's outstanding. And so instead of realizing that they're out on a ledge for which there's no way to save these outstanding financial instruments, instead of writing them down or writing them off, they're trying to keep them alive. In a sense, it is like you sometimes talk about a patient who stopped breathing, and they say, oh, don't worry, we'll pump oxygen into them. They're trying to...
Even though, pumping oxygen when they aren't even breathing, that's pretty humorous, isn't it?
Well, I talked to an expert Monday, and he said, you've got zombie banks and zombie companies, and the zombie banks know the zombie companies are going to default on the debt, so they're giving the zombie companies more money, which is increasing the debt to the bank. It's increasing the debt that the companies are holding without doing anything to give them more of an ability to pay back the debt. And so, he said this is the night of the living zombies controlling the financial system. And this is an expert who was at the center of power 15 years ago and was warning of 2008. He and LaRouche were two of the few people who actually were warning, beginning in 2006, that the bubble was going to blow out the system. Now, Bill, here's the problem. They won't address the unsustainable nature of the debt.
Right.
Because that's what their power is. That's what they think that's their money. Right. And they're trying to figure out how to keep that liquid so that they can keep trading, essentially, the dead instruments. Now, to do that, they want more money. But to some extent, at a certain point, the governments are essentially saying that our debt is too much. I mean,
Yeah, but these people believe in the MMT, right? You know what that is? The same school that the magic money tree, which the AOC must have gone to her business school, and that's all they taught her.
Well, and here's the problem. If you keep pumping money, you're increasing all kinds of debt. But let's start with government debt. Governments are so indebted that they're essentially insolvent.
Right.
And so they're incapable of doing fiscal stimulus policies without triggering inflation. So the idea that you would give money to governments like Bernie Sanders' proposal of $17 trillion for green policies for the next 10 years, the governments can't do that because they'll never sell their bonds. The interest rates on their bonds are the lowest levels ever. So that's
right. They're actually negative now. So actually, if you put money in the bank, it's dissolving. It's disappearing.
Well, that's different. That's the banks. But I'm talking about government bonds are hitting the lowest level ever. Now, so you have governments that are insolvent. So how do you then justify pumping money in? Well, what the central bankers are saying, and this came from Mark Carney, who's the head of the Bank of England, but it also comes from BlackRock, one of the largest equity firms in the world. What they said is that you have to have a merger between fiscal policy and monetary policy. And
Right.
the way to do that is have the central banks take over the government budgets. Now, in a sense, central banks very often do determine what governments do. But now they're saying absolute constraint on governments under the control of the monetary authorities,
Right.
which means that the private bankers will control governments.
Whoa.
Now
That's kind of scary. It's almost like the comment by basically Omar that said the United Nations needs to take over the U.S.-Mexican border. I mean, it's a similar kind of thing because they're basically saying in order to save the system, we have to let the banks take over the governments, right?
Well, yeah, that's exactly what they're saying. And this would be, you have Mark Carney, the head of the Bank of England, who said that what we need, let me find this quote from him. Well, actually, let's start with the proposal from BlackRock.
Right.
They're saying...
But by the way, BlackRock's the same group of people that were involved with funding the insurance for the World Trade Center, and the money was then funded through the BlackRock group to fund the Aria complex at the tune of billions of dollars because they had insured so many $1 million and got billions out of it. So people don't realize the Aria complex in Vegas was built with dirty money from over-insuring the destruction of the World Trade Center by controlled demolition. Same people.
What Mark Carney called for was creating a new virtual currency to replace the dollar.
So in other words, they're going to replace the dollar with what, like an e-currency?
Yeah.
Ooh.
And what he's saying is that we need something that's not physical behind the currency, but a virtual currency, so that we can extend credit as much as we want. So that's
my forehead is burning because I feel like I'm going to soon have the mark of the beast. What do you think?
Bill, that's one version of
that is so crazy, isn't it? Do you think does it make your skin crawl when you hear this kind of comments?
Well, I'm glad they're making it now because they're coming out in the open.
Exactly. Yeah, amazing.
Carney proposed this at Jackson Hole, Wyoming, at the conference last weekend.
Right.
He was backed up by Larry Summers, the former Treasury Secretary under Obama.
Right.
And Summers basically said that with interest rates stuck at zero, we now have to go to negative rates. But the United States is heading toward a recession, so what do we do? Now that's where BlackRock's proposal comes in. The former Swiss central banker named Hildebrand, who spoke on behalf of BlackRock, said that what we need is a regime change in monetary policy. He called it that, a regime change.
Regime change.
And he said central banks will be independent of governments, but governments will no longer be independent of the central banks.
Ooh, scary. So what you're talking about is they want a tyranny of the bankers. Because remember, every war since the Napoleonic Wars where the Rothschilds sent a lie with their little pigeons saying that Napoleon had won the war. They saw the stock market collapse. They bought everything up, and they've taken care of the British government ever since, right?
Well, I'm giving you and your listeners a complete scoop because this was not.
Wow, this is so hard to comprehend that they're actually this bold to say this straight faced, isn't it?
Well, I've got more for you. If you give me a chance here.
Well, I want you to say it. I'm sitting here. Good thing I'm sitting down so I don't fall down. I mean, this is that scary, isn't it?
Well, what Mark Carney said, the name that he suggested for this virtual currency would be a synthetic hegemonic currency that would replace the dollar as the world currency. Now, what the BlackRock people said, and when they talk about a regime change, they said we need to go from unconventional monetary policy, in other words, quantitative easing, negative rates, and so on, which isn't working,
right,
to unprecedented policy coordination. And they say the only danger is that if you just simply pump money, the danger is that you could trigger hyperinflation.
Right.
So therefore, what you need is a committee of experts who will decide how to deploy the new money, and will keep an eye on things to stop it before it moves to hyperinflation. Now, this banker I told you about that I talked to said, oh, well, these are the same experts who created the 2008 crash.
Yeah, but they never fixed it. Remember that movie, The Big Short? They actually had a 4-minute dialogue where they said all this stuff happened and people went to jail, and they said not. Nobody did. They never fixed it, did they? Please continue.
No, and the committee of experts will work through something called a Standby Emergency Fiscal Facility, or a SEF.
Right.
And what the SEF is, that when they find that there are institutions about to go bankrupt, they'll just hand out money to them. Whether
Really?
they're governments, whether they're private corporations, private banks.
Wow.
Now,
see, this is what they did in 2008, but the Chinese didn't do that. They poured $500 billion, $500 billion into infrastructure like high-speed rail and many more, and roadways and manufacturing facilities and warehouses to store material for manufacturing. We didn't.
Well,
we poured money into big mega
here's where
banks, and there was a contraction of 35% of the small banks, right? Please continue.
well, here's where it goes off the rails completely. What are they saying would be the best place to put the money? Green policy.
No.
Financial initiative.
Green policy?
Yeah.
There's a town in Texas, actually, I heard about it. They're actually returning the money from Bloomfield because the 75,000 town decided to go green, and then the price of gasoline and gas went down. The price of electricity went up so much that it's just driving the town into bankruptcy, and they're in debt up to like $30 million or something, this little town, just because they decided to go green because Bloomberg gave them a chunk of money to go green. This is an insane policy.
What's going to happen is that if it's not stopped, there will be a massive flow into new bubbles on carbon trading, various forms of green bonds. Cities will float bonds supposedly for infrastructure, but what will be the infrastructure? They're actually talking about ending using heavy machinery for roads and employing cheap labor. You know, they're really going to...
You want to go back to like a pre-industrial age where you didn't have heavy machinery to fix roads. You had workers with shovels and picks.
Exactly.
Whoa.
Now, and so let me just go through this again, people, because people have to get this picture. The idea of a synthetic currency that would be controlled entirely by bankers,
right,
that would be backed by nothing, but the bankers would be the ones who would determine how much credit there is.
Wow.
That goes against the Constitution, which says that's the function of the Congress.
Right.
Secondly, the regime change, which basically says the governments will be completely controlled by central banks. This is the bankers' dictatorship that people have been warning about, that we've been warning about. You know, LaRouche, in 1971, when Nixon pulled the plug on the Bretton Woods system and ended the gold reserve system,
right,
LaRouche said they're going to go to fascist economic policies that will have to be enforced by police state methods, and that eventually they're going to use it to reduce populations. And if all this money goes into the green financial initiatives, it will automatically end up reducing populations because people who are poor won't be able to eat. There won't be money to move food to areas where people don't have it. And so this is the genocidal policy that you get when you allow people like Prince Philip.
You've taught me a lot, and I have other experts on, but let me throw 2 or 3 things out that are solutions that come from LaRouche and other LaRouche-like organizations. The first one is we need to have credit for an innovative economy, which is a Hamiltonian credit. We need to wall off people's savings so they can't be grabbed by banks and used as part of the bubble economy, which is basically the Glass-Steagall bill. The third thing we need to do is we need to have an idea where we can cross-collaborate across state and country lines. For example, we should already be negotiating, Trump should be, as part of the deal with trade in China, we want to have 2,000 or 3,000 Chinese engineers and technicians coming here to train our engineers and technicians how to build high-speed rail so we can build it. And we need to also have total recycling so that China learns some of our recycling technologies so that there's no pollution pumping out of their smokestacks, which we have reduced by 76% since the 1970s. And we recycle everything right down to molecular cubes. Those are simple solutions. And they not only cross-collaborate, they actually will generate business, but we have to invent a new business. We need to have some guy in his garage that's got a new technology. He can get the money to become a medium or large business. We need a system where it's not the governments that take over or banks, right? So, I mean, you guys have got some great ideas. They need to happen, don't they?
Do you have difficulty taking supplements? Are you searching for a high-quality, complete nutritional drink that your whole family will love? NutriMedical's Life Support has arrived. All of your daily nutritional requirements in one quick, delicious drink. Dr. Bill Deagle's Life Support is a proprietary blend of vegan protein, activated vitamins, essential minerals, amino acids, probiotics, green tea, digestive enzymes, anti-inflammatories, cancer prevention, detoxification, and much more. Your body will high-five you for this one. Life Support is the best complete nutritious meal replacement on the market. Whether you are an elite athlete, have post-operative challenges, chronic illness, elderly, or a family that just wants a quick, delicious drink, try Dr. Bill Deagle's Life Support for optimized nutrition in one great-tasting smoothie. Just add cold water, almond milk, fruit, or anything else you like. NutriMedical's Life Support. Try our great-tasting chocolate or vanilla today. Call 888-212-8871 or visit us online at NutriMedical.com. NutriMedical.com for the whole family.
Red Deer Velvet DR is an amazing new product with a patent to preserve 300 biomolecules and 6 hormones, same as fetal life, where you don't age at all. The state of fetal life allows the 300 biomolecules and 6 hormones produced by the placenta to be supportive of the regeneration of tissues and organs, with maximum apoptosis, changing the tissue and organ structure of a fetus. That's why if fetal surgery is performed, there is no scar. Taking 2 to 3 capsules twice a day with oncomycin, myco-D2, provides an amazing support for regeneration of any tissue and organ in the body, and even advanced stem cell therapy support treatment. Do get NutriMedical's Red Deer Velvet DR from Dr. Bill Deagle at NutriMedical.com, NutriMedical.com, 888-212-8871. Stay well and stay young with NutriMedical. Lumen photon therapy, infrared light, far and near infrared, is extremely important for pain control, stimulation of nitric oxide, improved perfusion, and stem cell activation and reduction of cytokines. Dr. Bill uses it for pain control, for regeneration techniques, for organ regeneration, and for stimulation of your stem cell activity. This amazing lumen photon therapy this year will probably have an additional device with frequency therapy during the on phase of the lights. To obtain a lumen photon machine, contact Dr. Bill at NutriMedical.com, 888-212-8871. He'll prescribe it with the providing nutraceuticals to help with your regeneration, healing, and pain control. Nothing like the lumen photon therapy for easy therapy for your eyes, your pain, your joints, regeneration of organs, detoxification of the body. Get a lumen photon machine from Dr. Bill Deagle, NutriMedical.com, 888-212-8871. Stay well with NutriMedical. The Sonic Life Machine is one of the most amazing therapies that Dr. Bill provides. It is the best sine wave exercise machine on the planet, doing whole body vibration, opening up the muscle to reduce insulin resistance, improve perfusion, release stem cell therapy throughout the body, and epigenetically stimulate the body to release DNA activated. The epigenetic therapy with the sine wave curve of frequencies given for atomic resonance by Linus Pauling for minerals and amino acids stimulates the production of messenger RNA to correct structural protein enzyme deficiency for almost every illness. There's nothing like the sine wave therapy for improving body healing for exercise, but also the epigenetic treatments Dr. Bill can provide can help neutralize frequencies for disease states and illness. Get a Sonic Life machine through Dr. Bill Deagle at NutriMedical.com. Contact us at NutriMedical.com, 888-212-8871, or go to the website NutriMedical and give us a contact. Dr. Bill is available to help you get well with NutriMedical.
Need a powerful ally to fight daily bugs and serious pathogens? Allicin Med is the powerful universal pathogen killer's latest advance of German-sourced allicin, enzymatically stabilized to clear the body of bacteria, fungi, mycobacteria, and parasites. It penetrates body biofilms and is non-toxic to tissues. Pathogen resistance cannot develop for long-term body-optimized wellness. Clear stealth pathogens that promote autoimmune disease, cancer and vascular inflammation and plaque and promote healing of tissues. Now pathogen-free. With 200 milligrams more power than prior Alamed, you can't get a more powerful ally to fight daily bugs and serious pathogens. Give your body what it needs. Allicin Med. Order Dr. Bill Deagle's Nutridyne at 888-212-8871 or NutriMedical.com. That's 1-888-212-8871 or NutriMedical.com. And listen to the NutriMedical Report on the Genesis Radio Network with open lines every weekday. NutriMedical.com, bringing nutrition and medicine together.
And welcome back. So, Harley, I mentioned a couple of points that LaRouche has talked about for decades that are partly solutions. Number one, let's go back to a gold-backed standard like Bretton Woods and the gold-backed dollar. The yuan, which is a Chinese currency, is already gold-backed. Lock in the currency differences so you don't have trade or non-trade barriers. And then lock in other currencies unilaterally with each country as you set up trade and calculate out what the size of their economy is and review it every year on the exchange rate. But to be honest with you, the Chinese have done things that we actually historically have learned, and we didn't do them. So after 2008, they invested in their economy and infrastructure. We didn't. We blew up the market-ready, already fat banks and made them bigger and collapsed 35% of the small and medium-sized banks. This is an insane policy that eventually is going to cause death to the Western economy, isn't it?
Bill, if we went back to a fixed exchange rate, there would be, number one, no so-called currency manipulation.
Right.
Because the currencies would have a value that would be fixed.
Right.
And then at the end of a period, maybe 4 months or 6 months, you'd evaluate whether the currencies are actually weaker or not. If they are
right.
weaker, you adjust it.
Well, I would have like a currency day, every day, once a year maybe, where you actually do a currency adjustment day, and you do it unilaterally. You don't do it multilaterally. And then that would make the Chinese feel secure. We'd also say we want to secure intellectual property in America, but let's collaborate. If we got 1,000 times more engineers in China, they can take a good idea we have and get it to market and get it ready and get it even factories built back in America. They should have Chinese engineers and scientists building stuff inside the United States with American workers. And that can be done, couldn't it?
Let me go step by step through the solutions, because you brought up that LaRouche has had these solutions. These go back to his original proposal,
right,
the day after Nixon pulled the plug on August 15th, 1971.
Right.
And by the way, Nixon imposed wage and price controls as part of that same pronouncement. Now,
right.
What LaRouche said is that if you go back to fixed exchange rates, you squeeze out the speculators, because
right.
the speculators started by speculating on currencies.
Right.
And once they got that as a foot in the door, they were able to then relax banking regulations so they could create new speculative instruments. This was called
right.
financialization.
Right.
And over the 80s and 90s, we had everything financialized. And this is how they created mortgage-backed securities. It's the way they created security, bundling of loans, whether it's auto loans, housing loans, student loans,
right.
And then sliced and diced them and put them in different bonds. And what this led to in the mortgage market is that no one really knew who held the mortgage anymore, because the mortgage was hypothecated into 50 different banks.
Right. It was making financial sausages and didn't know what the content of the sausage was.
Or who was producing it.
Right. It didn't matter if it was whatever the heck it was. It could be garbage from the dump rather than actually pork or beef, if you want to call it. So the quality of what's in the sausage, they say, oh, no, it's good quality. It came from such and such a place. But it could be totally garbage, or even if you ate it, literally, financially, you die. Right?
Well, here's something that I think we should be keeping an eye on. I just pieced this together today. In the first quarter, or the second quarter of 2019, 243,000 borrowers defaulted on first lien mortgages.
Right.
So 243,000. It's 250,000.
Right.
Now, what they're saying, though, is that the rate of people going into trouble in the mortgage is dropping.
Either pre-default or about to default. It's increasing, isn't it?
They're saying it's dropping. Now, why?
I don't buy that at all.
I know it is, Bill. It is, but here's why: lower interest rates are allowing more to refinance. People who are headed for default are now being given lower interest rates to borrow to go into a second loan.
Oh, yeah.
So this is exactly what the bubble was in 2008, when people were falling behind. They give them lower interest rates, different kinds of, interest-only loans.
Restructure it, right? Yeah.
So you're restructuring it. So on the books of the bank, it looks as though the loan is good. The bank gets a fee for that, and the person's left with a larger mortgage, a larger payment, even though the interest rates may be lower, but their circumstances haven't improved. In other words, they went into default because they couldn't afford to keep the loan going.
Right.
And now they're getting a new loan. So
what you're saying is the banks are benefiting on the appearances, like putting makeup on somebody that's already dead and saying they look great.
That's exactly it. Now, the reason they're doing these things is, let's just take a look at what happened last week. While all this was going on at Jackson Hole, all these policy proposals,
Really?
The world was focused on the so-called G7 conference.
Right.
Now, the G7 conference was a disaster because Macron focused on Amazon forest fires, which occur every year.
Right.
The actual figures that are out now today show that there were worse fires in 2010, 2006.
Right. Well, that's because he wanted a distraction away from what's going on in France, right?
Well, no, he wanted a distraction away from what Trump wanted to talk about, which is economic and monetary policy.
Exactly.
Trump had two agenda items. One was economic policy, coordinated economic policy, and secondly, bringing Russia back into the G7.
Right. You want to make them the G8. In fact, that's a big comment he made. I thought that makes sense because you want to stop Russia from putting nukes in Laochila Island and North Korea and Venezuela, bring them back into the fold, right?
Now, Macron had just met with Putin, and Macron also said, well, it's time to bring Russia back in. But when Trump initiated the discussion, Macron got all the other heads of state except Italy to call for keeping the Russians out.
You're kidding.
Now, the Italian Prime Minister Conte, whose government had collapsed the week before, nevertheless sided with Trump on that.
Right.
And what's interesting is that the Italians put together a new government, which won't last very long, because they brought in the Five-Star Movement and the so-called Democratic Party, which is a bunch of neoliberal idiots.
Right.
But they kept Conte in there because Conte has a good relationship with Trump, and Conte has an excellent relationship with Russia and China. So you have an Italian-Trump alliance. Macron is against him. Merkel's against him. Both of them are very weak. Boris Johnson didn't have much time to really work anything out with Trump because he was running around trying to get the EU to agree to renegotiate, which they won't do.
And also using a lot of gel to make sure he messes up his hair so it looks particularly scary.
Yeah. And then you have the Japanese who are caught up in a major conflict with South Korea.
Right.
So,
in fact, they stopped sharing intelligence information, which is stupid and insane to not share intel, right?
Here's what else is going on. You had the Turkish government, Erdogan, basically said to NATO, we're buying these Russian anti-missile defense systems because they work and they're available to us, and you're not offering us the same systems except with strings attached. The Russians are attaching no strings. So what happened yesterday? The Indians rejected Pompeo's demand that they cancel the purchases from Russia and said they're going to buy the weapons from Russia also.
Right.
Now, is it that the Russian weapons are so much better or so much more efficient or so much cheaper? No, it's that we're no longer in the unilateral world where the Anglo-Americans can dictate policy.
Yeah, exactly. And then they may not be 80% as good, but they're not going to attach to geopolitical strings, is what you're saying.
Yeah, and Trump is comfortable with that. You know, I mean, he'd like to sell the weapons instead of the Russians and the Chinese, but he's comfortable with the idea that nations are asserting their own sovereign rights. What he's not comfortable with is having a bunch of lunatics in his administration who are countering him every step of the way.
Oh, yeah. Why doesn't he fire them? I mean, why is Ray still in the FBI? Why is John Lightning Bolt still there with his spandex suit and his Lightning Bolt suit on? I mean, what's going on? Why does he tolerate these people?
Well, I don't know. And, you know, if I were Trump, I would have gotten rid of him. I would have cleaned him out a long time ago. The problem he's told, what they're telling him, is if you get rid of all of these guys, then you're going to be left without a team to do anything. Now,
I don't buy that at all. I think there's lots of smart people that have got a clue. There are people like they're thinking like LaRouche, like in your team.
There are, but the people who are advising Trump now are telling him that he's got to stick with one or two issues, like the so-called stock market boom, and secondly, he's being pushed to have a hard line with China, whereas you can see from Trump himself, the statements he's made recently have been conciliatory. He wants to get a deal. He wants to meet with China.
And China wants a deal too, by the way. Their currency is the lowest in 11 years. The Chinese know that there's a number of companies leaving because they are a little aggressive with companies have moved to manufacture there. But the fact is that China desperately needs to renegotiate how they work. They have some hardliners in there, but the real people in power realize if we don't play ball, there's a lot of other Asian countries, for example, that'll pick up their corporations. They'll just move from China to Vietnam or South Korea or Japan. They don't need to stay there, or even come back to America.
Bill, at this point, there's not wholesale motion from corporations because they have pretty good situation in China.
Yeah, but there's a kind of like an earthquake happening. In other words, a warning that if things go south, which I don't think they will under Trump. I mean, if somebody else is there, but I have a feeling that Trump is going to get a deal by the fall. I think Xi and Trump are going to work out something that's going to actually make sense with getting rid of the bubble economy with Glass-Steagall and getting a locked-in currency backed by gold. We need to actually move back to that.
Let me go through the picture with China because it's very complex right now.
Right.
You have the Taiwan arms sales, which the Chinese don't like. You've got this Hong Kong regime change operation, which the Chinese don't like. You've got the South China Sea buildup from the United States. You've got the trade war. You've got the religious, or not the religious, but the human rights issue, which is a phony one on the Uyghur Muslim terrorists, saying there are 1 million Muslims in concentration camps.
No. They're getting re-educated because they are terrorists, okay, and they're extremely aggressive. And the problem in Hong Kong, they try to blow it up. It's real simple. They want a separate court system. They don't want extradition to the Chinese courts. That's it. The rest of it, leave it alone. And the thing with Taiwan's not going to get disarmed. But those people in Taiwan, I have Taiwan friends and relatives. I can tell you, China is never going to take back Taiwan without a big fight. And if they try to take it,
Bill, they don't want to.
Let
me stick to the point on this.
Right.
What I'm saying is that there is nothing that should stand in the way of a U.S.-Chinese deal.
Right.
The Chinese have made clear they're willing to talk. Trump has made clear he's willing to talk. Everyone's pressuring Trump to come out and make some statement on Hong Kong, and he won't do it. He's saying it's an internal Chinese problem. And
I think China should know that by Trump not making a bold statement, he's saying work it out and make it look nice to the world. Don't go and extradite people to the Chinese communist system for extradition. Do work out a deal, because when we have people like Lee, the senior billionaire inside Hong Kong, calling for American intervention, the best intervention is just stand by Hong Kong saying, look, we want you to have your autonomous economic zone. We want you not to be extradited. Beyond that, leave it alone. And the Chinese don't need to do anything else. They need to stop trying to show hardline things like sending in falsely garbed up Chinese communists coming in and pretend that they're Chinese police, whatever. That looks bad. So Xi should actually remember some. And remember now, I don't think Xi is in total control of this. There's other members of the PLA and the government and the military that I think are doing things that make China look bad.
You're missing another point.
Right.
On the other side, the so-called Hong Kong democracy movement is funded and trained by the National Endowment for Democracy and George Soros.
Oh, I know that. I'm fully aware, which is why they go way beyond just the simple things, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so exactly. I agree.
The Chinese government already agreed to drop the extradition issue.
Yeah, so if it's dropped, then what's the problem? Why isn't this all settling down now? That's all. That's really the only issue they had, wasn't it? Extradition.
So it's not settling down because if China and the U.S. work together and solve this, then this whole banker cabal, the whole global bankers dictatorship, is thrown into chaos.
Exactly. Now, why isn't Soros arrested here or overseas? I know in Hungary they won't even want him to actually in the country. In fact, he's got a standing warrant in Britain for what he did manipulating the currency via lives in Britain. Soros is going to get arrested. Why is the man still in upstate New York and still has a big, massive home and so on in America? Why is this guy still breathing and funding devilishness, including in Hong Kong? What's going on? Why do we tolerate
that's the problem. The bubble is dependent on not having a China-U.S. relationship. And so the same people who are pushing this financial dictatorship policy...
okay. Because you see, 4 years ago, the Chinese backed the yuan with gold, and what you're saying is they have enough sense to do things that we did in our past. And if we start doing the things that we've done in the past, like the Bretton Woods and the gold standard and working out a deal with a fixed currency...
The scam is over, that's right.
The scandal's over, the bubble's over, and the globalist banker control is over too, right?
Yeah.
I see your brilliance. Oh, wise one, I see your brilliance. That's amazing. So, Harley, let me...
For that one iodine that you can really trust, a medical doctor-endorsed product that is backed by honest research and true integrative science. Then search no further. Go to NutriMedical.com for Dr. Bill Deagle's Nutriodine, proven time and time again to be the very best iodine available for you. Nutriodine is the only Tesla-activated monatomic plasma iodine in the world. It optimizes mitochondrial function and generation of new mitochondria, from totally neutralizing the venom from a desert recluse spider bite in Southern California to eliminating malaria parasites reported by medical missionaries in Central India. Dr. Bill's Nutriodine is simply the most powerful healing formula there is. Nutriodine clears the body of all known pathogens, restores it to an alkaline state, and even promotes stem cell regeneration. Order Dr. Bill's Nutriodine today at 888-212-8871 or visit us online at NutriMedical.com.
Red Deer Velvet DR is an amazing new product with a patent to preserve 300 biomolecules and 6 hormones, same as fetal life, where you don't age at all. The state of fetal life allows the 300 biomolecules and 6 hormones produced by the placenta to be supportive of the regeneration of tissues and organs, with maximum apoptosis, changing the tissue and organ structure of a fetus. That's why if fetal surgery is performed, there is no scar. Taking 2 to 3 capsules twice a day with oncomycin, myco-D2, provides an amazing support for regeneration of any tissue and organ in the body, and even advanced stem cell therapy support treatment. Do get NutriMedical's Red Deer Velvet DR from Dr. Bill Deagle at NutriMedical.com, NutriMedical.com, 888-212-8871. Stay well and stay young with NutriMedical. Hi, I'm Dr. Bill Deagle, MD, AAEM, ACAM, A4M, of NutriMedical.com, and a consultant providing email advice free on advanced protocols for your optimized wellness and advanced technologies to heal and regenerate you. You can contact us at NutriMedical.com, that's NutriMedical.com, or 888-212-8871. You get free email starter protocols of our top medical-grade nutraceuticals, initial testing, and recommendations for your own primary doctor to do, as well as recommendations to give you an idea of a consultation and a full protocol to try to help you regenerate your tissues, heal naturally without the use of toxic polypharmacy. I can send test kits to you as well anywhere in the world and provide you recommendations to referral of specialty clinics worldwide. So contact me, Dr. Bill Deagle, at NutriMedical.com. That's NutriMedical.com, or 888-212-8871. At NutriMedical.com, we have the most amazing drinks with the best mouthfeel, highest quality bionutrient exposure to your body to heal and regenerate, and the most powerful persistence of nutrients to heal your body dramatically. We have Ageless, which makes you age less, which repairs your DNA, extends your telomeres, etc. We have Life Support that detoxes phase 2 detox pathways, glucuronidation, sulfation, and methylation pathway support. We have Glycemics that blocks the carbohydrate absorption and helps with diabetes or weight loss, and as well helps with people that are trying to build up muscle, using things like our special formulas from Dr. Wolf called Mega Muscles between meals along with Sports Energy Light. We have the amazing Nutri-Complete, the most complete red and greens drink in the world, with the best mouthfeel and flavor. You can often mix it too with Vitamin Mineral Mix, which is our fruit-flavored mixed power of vitamin minerals. Stay well with NutriMedical every day. We are going live in a few seconds. And we have, we're back now, and we have, Harley, you've got a lot of stuff to cover here, including Mr. Comey. Please continue.
Well, let me just make this offer to your listeners. I've just written a memo that details these 3 financial scams that the bankers are coming up with that I'll make available to any of your listeners who send me an email and ask for it. Just write to me at harleysch@gmail.com.
And you should, by the way, send those documents to me. I'll post them up on today's site, too. So
and
they
it's
can
also
read it.
So it's harleysch@gmail.com.
Yeah.
And it goes through what these scams are so that people can be aware of them, can talk to others about them, and that we can prevent the bankers' agents in the Congress and in the media from steamrolling the president into supporting these things. As it stands now, Trump is opposed to all of these measures, but he's being manipulated into a lose-lose fight with the Federal Reserve. The issue he's fighting on of interest rates is the wrong issue, because the bankers want lower interest rates because they want the money to go into the speculative bubble.
Right.
Trump wants lower interest rates for production. But unless you have banking reform, as the kind that LaRouche has proposed, of Glass-Steagall and Hamiltonian credit, you're not going to have funds flowing into industry and manufacturing and agriculture, but it's going to go into speculation, into the Ponzi scheme.
Exactly. In other words, what you're saying is basically LaRouche has had the plan for like 40 years. If you do three things, go back to a Bretton Woods-style gold standard dollar, link it up and lock it with not only China but other countries unilaterally, each country separately, have a Glass-Steagall bill to stop the bubble economy from expanding, and if we make a deal with China, the idea of the banker bubbles is over. In other words, they don't have any more bubbles. Their bubble machine is gone, and now we have sovereign governments around the world that will have an economy and able to link with the dollar and with China. In fact, this will allow an international collective of currencies that will stabilize the world economy, and it won't blow up or cause war or economic chaos or starvation and death. Please continue.
Well, let me just extend the point you just made a little further. What the Chinese know is that part of what Peter Navarro and Trump's team that's anti-China is pushing is that China become part of the bubble. And that way, they can use
not going to happen.
They could, well, just so this, I'm just telling you what they're saying. They could use the savings of the Chinese people and of the Chinese government to pour it into the bubble. That's what they're thinking. China if they have 3 to 4 trillion and you leverage that 30 times, that's 120 trillion. That takes them through the next couple of quarters. But the Chinese are going to do that. The Chinese economy has been hurt by the trade war, but it's not cracking. It still has an enormous
it's got a momentum, and that momentum will go on for some time. But again, they have a demographic problem. They have a deficiency of enough females, and they have to go outside to Indonesia or to the Middle East in order to get wives, because the next generation is going to happen, and these people are going to get older. And right now, though, they have a certain amount of momentum, and it's going to transfer to India and other countries. But see, what we need is this thing like the Belt and Road needs to be not just China, but international. What I see is people think Belt and Road is all a takeover by China, but it's not. It's actually an idea that America and China and all the other nations should embrace, so that second and third world countries like Central America can thrive, so they don't have their people trying to get to our border to get away from the disaster there, right?
Bill, you keep saying that the Chinese, it shouldn't just be China. It's not just China.
I know that, but I'm saying that that's what the media are pushing, even though there's many countries, you know.
My organization, the Schiller Institute, just had an event in Berlin yesterday.
Right.
We had 5 top officials from the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences.
Right.
And what they talked about is that the Belt and Road is inclusive, as opposed to the Trans-Pacific Partnership and other policies which were exclusive. Number 2, that the credit can be negotiated on terms that are acceptable to the countries that are borrowing. That it's not a debt trap. And I can tell you we had African diplomats who were there who praised the Chinese for what they're doing to help their countries develop, and said the people who are attacking the Belt and Road Initiative as a debt trap, they're the ones who actually created a debt trap for the last 40 years of neo-colonial policy.
Exactly.
So what we're looking at is a policy that would be win-win for the United States. And in Trump's meetings with Xi Jinping, he got a glimmer of what it would mean if the U.S. and China could work together. Right. Now, the stumbling block is the fact that we have a $500 or $600 billion deficit. Now, you're not going to be able to reduce the deficit overnight. You can't reduce it with tariffs. You're not going to bring back industry to the United States unless you change the banking and tax laws in the United States. So what Trump has to do is move incrementally to work with China to bring the deficit down. How? By increasing overall trade between the two nations, so that we're buying more from them and they're buying more from us.
Well, I'll give you an example of something I thought of, an idea. Listen to this. We're moving to robotics and AI. So right now, even in Japan, there's 3D printers. So you can print half a dozen parts in somebody's garage. Things are going to move in the next, say, decade, so that there will be no advantage to moving to a country with giant numbers of workers building something. So we want to give the advantage to Chinese companies and European companies moving back to America to build AI-built parts and manufacturing on American soil. And if we do that, we'll have more new jobs. In fact, 90% of the new jobs in the next decade haven't been invented yet. People don't know that. They don't realize that an innovative economy moving faster and faster, the new jobs, whether it's AI, computing, or manufacturing, whatever, the ideas of what they're going to be haven't even been invented 10 years from now. So 2029, for example, is a completely different world. 2049, 30 years from now, is a completely different world. We are not ready for that. And that's where we need to start being inventive and creative on how to create a new economy, which is going to mutate into one that actually will work with advanced technology, so that we're not dependent on sending over to a slave class in India or China to build things for us and send it back as toys and clothes. And the Chinese need to be able to collaborate and get their smart people to send things back and say, build high-speed rail for us, put factories back in America, when eventually you're going to have AI building it, right?
Let me get back to another point that I think is, we just have a few minutes left, but I think people need to hear this. The Inspector General released the first of several reports on the origins and the problems that were encapsulated in the so-called Russiagate case. This first one was a shot at Comey. And what Horowitz's report said is that Comey violated Department of Justice and FBI regulations. However, he stopped short of finding that these were violations of the law. Now, it's interesting to me that when Mueller said that about Trump on obstruction, that they found various areas which looked shady, but there were no laws violated, the anti-Trumpers went nuts and said that's, but in the case of Comey, where they said that, they say, oh, he's been exonerated, he's been vindicated.
Yeah, but so, let me insert an important factoid I heard this morning that's really important to hear this too. What they did is the classification was changed after he released it to the media and his various functionaries. So the classification was placed on the stuff that was in his own home safe and the stuff that he didn't take home, that he talked about anyway. So the fact is that he's not off the hook. He's off the hook temporarily, and this Mr. Narcissist now, they call the Green Giant Narcissist, is not at all absolved, but he's still walking around like, hey, I've been slandered. He's a nut, isn't he?
But here's the point. On this particular case, there's not going to be charges presented.
Of course not.
But this is the smallest case against Comey.
Right.
He's got cases coming up where he was defending the network that did the Hillary Clinton investigation. He was protecting the Peter Strzok, Lisa Page operation.
Right.
He threatened Trump with blackmail when he went to talk to Trump about the Steele dossier. And he himself, Comey himself, said this was my J. Edgar Hoover moment.
Whoa. Because
he's referring back to the point that Hoover used to go into people like Lyndon Johnson, the Kennedys, Eisenhower, all of them saying, look, we know you've been having affairs, we know that. Yeah. You give us more money, you give us more freedom, and we won't bring it up.
Yeah, in other words, he's talking about, what you're saying is Comey was doing geopolitical blackmail, and he's going to burn for it, isn't he?
Well, he was doing geopolitical blackmail, and Trump rejected it. So what did they do? They set up the Get Trump team that was then using the Steele dossier to say that Trump is a Russian puppet. And after 2.5 years of investigation, actually after 6 weeks of investigation, Mueller found out that there was no truth to any of it. But he dragged on for another 2 years, smearing the president, smearing people like Michael Flynn and Manafort. You know, in Manafort's case, this is interesting. Trump is starting to turn on Ukraine. He just announced today that he's considering withdrawing the aid money that would go to new weapons to Ukraine. What's the issue in Ukraine? The Ukrainian Secret Service drafted fake dossiers that showed Manafort was laundering money out of Ukraine to the offshore banks and to the U.S. banks. They had these handwritten accounting books. And it turns out that the current prosecutor general in Kiev is saying this was a fraud. Now, if this comes out...
Yeah, but that's because they were working with the State Department to actually create that fraud, weren't they?
Well, the State Department knew about it because the person who was one of the people on the scenes in Ukraine around the time of the Maidan coup was none other than Christopher Steele.
Exactly.
Who was working with people in Victoria Nuland's office. Nuland, the neocon.
And Nuland knew about this. That's why she was so arrogant when she was saying how they brought in the current director or leader of Ukraine, who's a criminal, who wasn't properly elected, right?
Well, Nuland was working with the Soros networks and the National Endowment for Democracy. By the way, the same people funding the Hong Kong riots. But the important thing about that is that Nuland had carte blanche from Obama to run a coup in Ukraine, which is the whole basis of the anti-Russia policy that's been used to put sanctions on Russia, to turn against Putin. And Trump, if he turns this around, he'll not only be absolved on Russiagate and not only be able to nail people like Brennan and Comey and Clapper and Obama for what they did, but create a basis for a Russian-Ukraine rapprochement and also a Russian-NATO, at least end of the Cold War there, which would be the basis for Russia rejoining the G8 and for there to be collaboration that would benefit all nations.
Right.
So Trump has in his hands the potential to do that. And the Comey report that's coming up is also on the FISA warrants, how that was a fraud. So I think Comey's looking at jail time. Today he was saying, those people who thought I was going to jail, I think they owe me an apology, but I'm not going to wait for it. Well, no, maybe he will have to send out condolence letters to people from inside the prison.
That's pretty funny. I think Comey thinks that if he plays the game a lot of politicians do in the District of Criminals or D.C., acts arrogant, acts narcissistic, thinks he's an inside job guy, thinks the law, he's above the law, he's intellectually and morally superior even if he's doing a criminal activity and a lie, and he's getting caught. The man has actually had open hearings, open TV interviews, but he's admitted guilt. I mean, you just take these video interviews and say, string them together, and the guy's going to go to jail. I mean, he's done. He's, as they say, if he was a cookie, he would already be overdone in the oven.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot still to come on this. We're just seeing the prologue. But the important thing is that the potential exists now for Trump to go ahead with LaRouche's policies. Today's Washington Post had another example of their fear of LaRouche by praising the judge who put LaRouche in prison, who just died.
Really?
Saying that this judge, Albert Bryan, his most important action in 30 years on the district courts was putting LaRouche in prison. That's interesting coming from the Washington Post, isn't it?
And people have to understand that China, about 3 or 4 years ago, developed a parallel to the SWIFT overnight transfer system, which Russia now participates in. And if you want to bring the world economy back together again, you have to make a deal that if you want to demilitarize La Orchila Island and Punta Huerte, Nicaragua, and the Korea of nuclear weapons, you have to work out a rapprochement and economics and bring them back into the G8. And then Russia and China will play ball. As they say when you're a kid, less time to play nice. I think Trump sees through all this, doesn't he?
I think so, but he hasn't.
Hopefully LaRouche has got some inside plans to get beyond these maniacs around Trump. Amazing show today. I learned something every time we have our show, Harley. Another amazing show coming up, hour number 3, John W. Spring. Last show before Labor Day. We'll be back in a moment. Your web questions, 818-818-6401. The sale's on. The code is LABOR, 7% off, and free shipping in the U.S. over $99.
And the medicine for the blues. Which was most